It is Championship Saturday, and we go home tomorrow after being together for 11 days, and we're going to try and have a sit and chat with Ielan Bradley. And I've kind of saved this when we talked to several athletes during the week, but with the thought that Ielan might and then did win Player of the Year, I kind of held out on everybody. And so that's what I want to start with. It's just we were all eating together at a restaurant when Debbie made that announcement. Your thoughts, just your ability, if you have, to process Player of the Year.
I processed it a little bit, and of course, Debbie always says she doesn't really care about preseason awards just because they don't really mean anything. It's from the prior season. I was excited when I had been selected as preseason Player of the Year, and I was excited when I did get it. I kind of thought that it could have gone to anybody else. Specifically Bree Ford from UTA and then Tatum Parrott, those were very high contenders, so I didn't necessarily know how they were going to figure out the stats and everything as far as who would be awarded with Player of the Year, but I'm really happy that it was me.
Well, you either glanced down at my second question or stole my thunder for the next one, because that's what I was going to ask you, is that you named the two other players that I think I agree. Those were the three that were in contention, and one of them we'll play against tonight. So let's start with the other, Bree Ford. When you think back to game planning against a player of that caliber, Ford, one of the truly strong all-around outsides in this conference, certainly a worthy entrant into that conversation.
No, yeah, for sure. When the awards came out the other day, she congratulated me, and I was like, I'm honestly surprised that it was even me. I thought it was going to be you. And she was like, I had no doubt it was going to be you, but she's just a good person all around. I've only had a few interactions with her, but nothing has been negative. And just on the court, she is definitely one of those people that we definitely game plan against.
Yeah, for sure. Been super impressed with Brianna Ford down the stretch. And then, of course, tonight, Tatum Parrott, numbers very high. Again, extremely worthy of being in this conversation, and that's who we're game planning here. So you'll see her on the other side of that, your impressions of Parrott this year.
I can't even believe she's a sophomore. We were scouting and everything this today, and I actually kind of took it in. Of course, we always go through numbers, but I saw her classification. I was like, sophomore, and she's doing really well right now. So it'll be interesting the next few years what she can do.
Yeah, she's going to wreak havoc on everybody for 2 more years. Another milestone for you this year, 1,000 kills, now at 1,079. But I want to talk about that between sophomore and junior year. That was, when I felt like you were going to make a big step up, you did. You had right at 300 kills after 2 years, and now close to 800 these last 2 years. In your mind, that difference, that summer, whatever it was, between the second and third year, what was it that elevated things so high for you?
I'd say just that spring season that we actually had my sophomore year going into fall of my junior season, just because my freshman year was COVID. So we were one of the schools that did play during COVID. So we had a full season, which acted like the spring and the fall. And then we had a full spring season, and then we had a full fall season. And then we were able to get a traditional spring, as in the rigorous training and the weight room all the time and everything like that. And focusing on those skills that are going to be able to help you for that next season that's coming up.
Yeah, I forget about the fact that was your first real off season between second and third year. You'd be a good person to answer this. We've had so many accolades for Debbie Humphreys this year, and I think she's garnered a tremendous amount of respect, obviously, both at SFA but around the league. Your impressions as you draw near to the close of playing for her, what will you remember about playing for Debbie Humphreys?
The main thing is that she's humble. She never likes to accept awards as her own. She always says, this wouldn't have happened without you guys. And it's true, but then also she is the one that has geared us to this point with her coaching. So it's it is a team award, and we know that her knowledge is able to help us be successful as well.
She, just to let people that are viewing this know how correct Ielan is on that assessment, at the team lunch where the individual awards were announced, Debbie didn't even mention the fact that she'd won Coach of the Year, and then when it got brought up, she deferred immediately to her coaching staff and the players. Blocking numbers for you. You talk about these 4 years. These are your block per set numbers. 0.47 as a freshman, 0.56 blocks per set as a sophomore, 0.70 blocks per set as a junior, and now 0.93 blocks per set as a senior. Far and away the highest block rate among all right sides in the WAC. You have 107 blocks after a huge match last night. What are the things that you've learned about blocking specifically that you've been able to put into practice?
This may contradict everything you just said, but I always feel like blocking has been my kryptonite. Like, I don't know, it's just one of the things that should be so simple, but there's so many technical skills and technical things that you have to do in order to get a block. And so it's like you can make one wrong move. You can be outside a hitter. You can be too far inside of a hitter. You can be not spread enough. You can be too far off the net, anything like that. And I have always felt like, okay, I'm a very literal person, so I feel like if I'm not perfect or if I'm not attaining to the situation, then it's not right. Whereas I always just have to remind myself, blocking just means taking up space. If the hitter hits into your hands, that's an extra point for you. But, yeah.
Let people know about just the small technical adjustments. I saw this even in this morning when you guys were going through serve and pass. I won't divulge what the situation was, but you were asking Associate Coach Evan Amstutz about moving even 1 or 2 squares in the net in terms of where your base is. Little things like that go a long way towards getting a block or getting tooled.
I mean, if we know that a hitter has a specific power shot, we want to take that away. So if we can step into that zone and take that space up and then force them to hit in another angle that we're more confident in digging, then that's the goal. Just making sure that we take up that space so that we're not allowing them to keep scoring off of us with their favorite shot.
As a right side hitter, of course, you're on the floor half of the time. And in drills during practice, that means that if we're running a drill that involves the offense, you're in that drill half the time and off half the time. One thing I've noticed about you this year is that when off the court, you're still very vocal in terms of encouraging, calling out where defenders are, calling out what shots you feel like should be taken. Is that something you've been intentional about these last few years as you've earned leadership roles here?
I wouldn't say it just started within these last 2 years. I mean, I've always been a vocal person since I was playing club. I think just gaining more knowledge about volleyball, it's helped to be able to help my teammates out and everything. But I've always found myself encouraging and just trying to help when I can without being bossy. But yeah, I feel like I've always been a communicator, and it's just come out more prominently these past few years.
I asked the seniors this at various times last year, so I'll ask you, and don't divulge a specific situation, but do you find it difficult sometimes as a senior when you see maybe a younger player, maybe not, but you see a teammate and you think, hey, that's not how we do things here, and you've got to step in. There may not have been many situations like that, but if you can think of a situation where you felt like, hey, I've got to take responsibility and go shelter this person, counsel this person, is that something that is proved to be a challenge for you to do?
I feel like it depends on the situation, but I feel like the one that I find myself stepping in more is just like mindset, knowing that, okay, if we're in a volleyball situation, say you mess up, okay, have a next ball mentality. Everything may not go your way, but once that ball is done, there's nothing you can do about it. So you have to move on and be able to do what you know how to do the next ball, or just positive self-talk. Like if somebody's talking down on themselves and not being happy with their play or anything like that, then I usually find myself like, hey, don't like change your words or figure out something else to say, or know that you are capable of doing well.
I was talking to my wife this morning. I think all of us have talked to folks back home off camera. You were talking to friends and family before we got started. And I was telling my wife this morning that as long as this trip has been, I feel like it probably couldn't have gone as any better in terms of all of us having space and getting along. And I know a lot of teams say that, But this whole trip, I feel like there's been a lot together and a lot separate. I think Debbie kind of mentored us when we first got here to the hotel. But talk a little bit about that. The space that this team takes, we're not on top of each other all the time, but there's a lot of genuine support between the 23 or 4 of us that have been traveling all year.
No, for sure. At the beginning of this 11-day trip, Coach Debbie mentioned, okay, we're going to have time for those people who are usually a little louder and energetic to, like, y'all may need to simmer down, and those of us who are more mellow will just have to tolerate for a little bit. But she's like, okay, don't wait until you're in a situation where you're like fed up. Just remove yourself from that situation and understand, like, be self-aware basically, and be able to come back and do whatever. But yeah, we've all been able to do whatever we needed to do without having to be on top of each other. We know each other's rooms and we can go whenever we want, but we can also leave whenever we want.
I just thought that advice was so brilliant that Debbie gave. I mean, I've taken advantage of that. I think everybody's taken advantage of that. You kind of gave everybody the liberty to kind of breathe a little bit and take your own space. You had a sweet moment at practice this morning with the commissioner's daughter, who was out there helping at pass and serve. And she wanted to go through stretching drills with the gals, and she did, and she wound up next to you. And it made me think about the responsibility that a college athlete, especially one as successful as you, has to younger girls. Moments like that may matter more than we realize. So your thought on that. Do you remember a time when you looked up to those 18, 20, 22-year-olds that got to play on the big court? And what's your thought process about mentoring young women?
My main thing, so I am an elementary education major, so I want to be a teacher. So that kind of just gravitated towards my personality already. And just the fact that volleyball has always been a predominantly white sport. And so her being like a little black girl, it allows other girls that look similar to me to know that they are capable of playing high level volleyball and doing what they aspire to do without having any judgment and just thinking, oh, they only have to be an athlete or anything like that. So yeah, it was really cool to get to know her, and she was really sweet.
Yeah, I think the point you made right there is just so important, and I've seen all of our athletes do that, but I think the point you make about a gal that young and having the feeling that she can participate and be successful and to have self-worth by going through those things. You mentioned your future right there, and that's how I want to finish this. People that have gotten to know you know what you're majoring in and what your intentions are, but talk a little bit about that. Like, where would you like to target? You mentioned your elementary ed major. Do you kind of have a target that, eventually this type of grade or these subjects might fit you best?
So I am specifying in core subjects of early childhood through 6th grade. So it'll be math, science, social studies, English language arts, and then fine arts. So I'll be certified in all of those areas. I don't know a specific content subject yet, but I'm leaning towards 2nd through 4th grade that I would like to teach. I definitely don't want to go to 5th grade, but I don't think my personality is bubbly enough for kinder and first, so I think the middle age levels are, yeah.
Yeah, my wife is elementary certified, and she would say the same thing. She's taught primarily 3, 4, when she's taught 3rd through 5th. When did that hit you? Did you come to SFA with that intention to major? And where's the backstory on the motivation? Where did that sort of trip in your mind that you said, hey, this is what I might like to do professionally when I'm through playing volleyball? This is what I'd like to major in.
When I came on my visit, I think I was leaning more towards like kinesiology, but I think that was more because of coaching. So I definitely knew I wanted to be teaching and coaching at the same time. And that kind of just started. I have 3 nephews, and so I've always loved kids, and those 3 are just like literally everything to me. And so being around them and being able to, like, they're at 3 different stages of their lives, and being able to see each stage that they're all so different. It's like funny to see how different they are, but know that they're still young and you can still nurture them at the same time.
Ielan Bradley, both preseason and now postseason Player of the Year, and will play tonight for the right to go to the NCAA tournament for the second straight year. Ielan, you're in the record books at SFA. We're not done, but I do want to say as we finish this, I've enjoyed so much the chance to talk to you, and of course calling your matches and watching you play and your family. You carry yourself so well. You'll be somebody that we talk about here for a long, long time. So I appreciate you, and thank you for being willing to sit down and chat before we head over to the gym for the championship.
Thank you.